this countdown, we have the NSA spy hubs. We all know that the NSA is spying on us, okay? That's old news. I mean, in 2013, former contractor for the CIA, Edward Snowden, revealed that the NSA was collecting phone records of millions of Americans and spying on us through our phone calls. Well, it turns out they have multiple top secret bases. Half of them, we don't even know where they're located. We just know that they're out there. Somewhere. These spy hubs are often windowless skyscrapers. There are some in Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco, Seattle, and of course, Washington, D.C. These buildings, though, aren't regular buildings. No, of course not. They are highly secure and guarded. In fact, they are built to withstand terrorist attacks, nuclear attacks, and natural disasters. So not only do we not know where they're located, we don't know what they're doing in all of these hubs, besides spying on American citizens. So you better behave. They're watching. Always watching.
Coming in at number 9, we have the Mount Rushmore Vault. Now this next one is going to sound like it was pulled out of a comic book, but I will let you know that it is 100% real. Behind Abraham Lincoln's head on Mount Rushmore is a secret tunnel that leads to a massive room that is full of US documents. Like, come on. I remember Team America World Police, they had a secret base in Mount Rushmore, but this couldn't be the truth. But would I lie to you? This was actually the original vision of the man who built Mount Rushmore. And can I just say for a moment that this is probably the most patriotic thing that anyone has ever done? I mean, you could put a flag in your front yard, but that is nothing compared to the amount of work that went into building faces of some of the most famous presidents in America into the side of a mountain. But inside this vault are some government documents. Now, what's on those documents, no one really knows. It could be anything. They could be extremely valuable. It could be the Declaration of Independence, or it could be just a bunch of boring files that don't really mean anything. And you are not going to get invited into this vault unless you have some sort of government power. Coming in at number 8, we have the Lehman Brothers secret Times Square building. When you look at all of the massive buildings in Times Square, you probably think that rent must be super high to have a spot in one of those buildings. Well, you would be right, but there is something that is even more valuable than renting the space. It's ads. If every building in Times Square is covered in ads because companies will pay out the butt to have all their stuff promoted up there. And the Lehman Brothers saw this as an opportunity and decided that was all they needed for their building. One of the centerfold buildings in Times Square is owned by the Lehman Brothers, and there is nothing in it. If you were to walk around inside this building, you would literally just have open spaces and dangling wires. The whole thing just acts as a massive billboard, and it's probably very profitable because they don't need to worry about any building upkeep. Coming in at number 7, we have Niihau, Hawaii. How big could a secret room be? Well, how about 70 square miles? Well, this one isn't so much a room, but it is very much an island, and it is definitely a secret that the government is trying to keep secret from everyone. This place is closed off to visitors. It is a self-sufficient island that only has 130 people living on it, and although the people are allowed to leave, no one is allowed to enter outside of medical services. There are some very strict rules on this island. For one, there is no booze. Just so you know, you wouldn't be able to sneak on the island and have a big party. The people there aren't really into that. Also, there are no guns, which is probably a good thing, but again, it brings down how much excitement there will be at any given time. And this place has chosen a way of life that is very different from our own. They don't have any plumbing, they have no traditional roads, and everything in terms of food is taken from the land by farmers and brought to the people. They do have electricity, however. All of that comes from solar panels, but they do not have internet. So you're going to have to get very good at talking to people. What a scary thought. Coming in at number 6, we have the Eiffel Tower apartment. If you go to Paris, you can now see what would be the most expensive apartment in the whole city, and that is the Eiffel Tower apartment. The man who built the Eiffel Tower didn't only do it so he could have his masterpiece be the center of attention. No, he wanted to have the best apartment maybe in the world. At the top of the Eiffel Tower is an apartment that only could be accessed by one man who built the Eiffel Tower himself, Gustave Eiffel. Now, people can go visit, but that isn't even the most secret part of this secret room. There's also also something that is underneath one of the legs of the Eiffel Tower, and that is a military bunker that can prep troops in the heart of the city without the enemy catching on. Could you imagine a bunch of French troops popping out of the base of the Eiffel Tower? You have to admit, the French have a way with theatrics. Coming in at number 5, we have Club 33. Here's something that the super rich and the government want to keep hidden from you, and even with me telling you about it, there's a good chance that you still won't be able to afford the entrance fee. See, Club 33 is something that is hidden away in Disney World. We all know that Disney World is a place where kids come to have their dreams come true, but the kids aren't roaming around free. They're running around with their parents, who, after a long day in the sun taking care of Rugrats, probably want a drink. Turns out, you can't get booze when you're at Disney World, but you can if you're part of Club 33. This is a members-only club that is somewhat a high rollers lounge. Only the best of the best can join. You need a recommendation to get in, and on top of that, if you can get accepted, you have to pay a $25,000 membership fee and then $12,000 annually each year after that. It's very much a status symbol. Some suspect that Club 33 has something to do with Jesus or the devil, since we all know that number 33 has strong religious connotations. I don't know if that's true, but if you're blowing your money at Disney World in that amount, you're probably in the Illuminati. Coming in at number 4, we have the secret train station under Waldorf Astoria. In movies, high-ranking government officials always have some sort of secret underground transportation that they can use to get around, and some of you think that that couldn't be a real thing in real life. There's no way that something like that could exist. Well, think again. Under one of the most famous hotels in New York, a hotel known as the Waldorf Astoria, there is a train station that is only used by the president himself. This is partly because almost every president has stayed there ever since its inception, but it's also one of the most secure ways for the president to travel. No one can get down there, and even if they did, there is a ton of secret features that the rail car has. For all we know, this thing could be built like a Bond car and have heat-seeking missiles that come through the headlights. Coming at number 3, we have Room 39. This is one of the most secret places in North Korea, which is already a very secretive place. No one really knows what goes on in Room 39, but people suspect that government workers work in there to try and create revenue for North Korea through illegal activity. Thought that they could be cooking and organizing the distribution of crystal meth, and they are also finding ways to commit billions of dollars in insurance fraud. That is wild. Going in number 2, we have the Vatican bunker. Now, this isn't a place where the Pope can go to hide out if the world starts to end because he was right about Armageddon. I mean, they probably have a room like that, but it won't be as exciting as the one I'm about to tell you about. The Vatican bunker is a place where they keep all the files that have been held in the Vatican for centuries. We're talking about 1,200 years of paperwork. I mean, I think you could fit most of that stuff onto a hard drive, so I don't know why they're still doing the whole pen and paper thing, but to each their own. But the Vatican archives have all of the juicy details about everything the church has done for a long time. You better believe that all of this information is closed to the public. In fact, if you ever get access to this secret bunker, you have to be a high-ranking scholar, and you can only look through certain folders. The Pope will vet everything that an outsider has access to before they are allowed into the bunker. And there is a hard cutoff. Anything that is younger than 75 years old, there is zero access to. That is a hard and fast rule that only the Pope can break. And even with probably the most accepting Pope of all time, he isn't about to let any of this information slip. But there is a lot of people who want to get their hands on those files with all the problems the church has been getting into in recent years. I can't go into details on this channel because it's disturbing, but either you know what I'm talking about or you're going to go look it up right now. And coming in at the number 1 spot is Area 51. Come on, this has to be number 1. What is going on in Area 51? Now, is this a room? Well, kinda. It's an indoor facility, so there is a room in there somewhere, I'm sure. But the whole thing has to be the biggest place that the government is hiding from us. And what is going on in there? We have no idea. I think we could all say aliens. That's probably what we're all thinking. But there could be some tech that will change the world. They could have mech suits in there that are like the ones from Pacific Rim. Just let us in already. already, and we'll stop messing around with the stock market. I promise.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Vipeholm experiments. This was a series of experiments in Sweden from 1945 to 1955. It's literally going to make you sick to your stomach when you find out what they did. Basically, they force-fed people with mental illness sweets to see if sugar was related to tooth decay. Imagine people just cramming food down your throat against your will. It's very gross. These experiments were conducted by the government and sponsored by the sugar industry. The experiments lasted for about 2 years, and by then the teeth of about 50 of the subjects in the experiment had been completely ruined. Moving on to number 9, we have Diego Garcia, and if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. Diego Garcia is a US occupied small island in the Indian Ocean. Technically, it's an overseas territory of Great Britain. In 1966, the people on the island were employed as contract farmers. They were working on coconut plantations. But from 1968 to 1973, the farm workers were kicked off the island by the UK government, so that the US/UK military could have a joint base on the island. So in 1966, the United States was given the rights to use the island if they forgot about the $14 million debt that the UK owed them. Now the island is used by government officials and it's highly guarded. In fact, rumor has it that the island is home to a secret prison. Rumor also has it that the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 that went missing without a trace actually just landed on this island. Not only that, but apparently rumor has it that this base is used by the CIA to torture prisoners. There's some crazy theories out there. I hope one day we'll find out if any of them are true. Then in 2009, the US military evicted several thousand of the island's local residents. Why they did this is still so top secret. Like, they don't know why they got evicted. I really wish we knew. Something fishy is going on over there. Coming in at number 8, we have the Dugway Proving Ground. Located in Utah, the Dugway Proving Ground is the main biological and chemical weapons testing site for the US Army. Like, who knows how many and what kinds of dark deadly weapons they are building and testing there. The base also contains top secret US military research documents, which is one of the reasons why the government doesn't want you to know about it. Now, in 1968, the unbelievable happened at the base. On March 13th, a high-speed jet sprayed 320 gallons of nerve gas VX around the air in a test. This is so deadly that 10 milligrams can kill people. It'll stop your respiratory muscles from working and then you'll just choke to death. Anyways, it sprayed in an area near a farm. The next day, thousands of sheep were found dead. The government denied that this was their fault, but people aren't buying it. Either way, they paid the rancher who lost his sheep over $300,000 and tried to keep this situation hush-hush. So the government definitely doesn't want us to know any of that, but I know it, and I shared it with you. Moving on to number 7, we have Camp Perry. Camp Perry, otherwise called The Farm, is a top secret training facility run by the CIA. The place is used to train CIA officers as well as officers working in the Defense Intelligence Agency. One of the reasons why this place is so secretive is because they don't want the identity of their top secret agents to be leaked. Because then, hello, they wouldn't be secret agents anymore, would they? Now, listen to just how intense this camp is. So former CIA officer Bill Wagner went to a 3-week interrogation course at the farm in 1970. He revealed that the people learning to be good interrogators practiced techniques such as sleep deprivation, mock execution, and would deliberately taint food, which exposes that CIA interrogators use these techniques in real life. Of course, the US government has never formally acknowledged the existence of this camp, although many people know that it's real. Coming in at number 6, we have Area 51. Of course, I had to put this one on the list. Hello, everyone wants to know what the heck is going on at that top secret base. Like, are the rumors true? Do they really have animals hiding there? Are they conducting unethical tests on humans? Area 51 is home to a number of conspiracy theories because it's so highly protected and secretive. Seriously, people have gotten killed for trying to even get close to the building. This has led a lot of people to believe that the military is up to something. What do you think goes on in Area 51? Let me know in the comments below. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Sherman Kent School for Intelligence Analysis. This is a training school in Reston, Virginia for CIA analysts. The school has been given the nickname The Vault because of how many locks and alarms and guards it has. So basically, the school opened in May of 2000 and it apparently teaches members many important things, such as foreign languages, regional studies, satellite image analysis, wiretap transcript analysis, and media report analysis. So basically everything you think a spy would need to know. This place is basically spy school, which is super cool. Now, like all places on this list, this one is also heavily guarded. It is located on the 2nd floor of a 5-story structure. The glass windows are smoked to prevent people from looking in and spying. The building also contains sensors to prevent eavesdropping from outside. And like I said, it's protected by a number of locks and alarms and surveillance. In our 4th spot, we have Menwith Hill. Menwith Hill is a Royal Air Force base located in the UK. In fact, it is said to be one of the most secretive places in the UK. First off, the place is super odd. Like, there's a bunch of white domes all over the place that look like giant golf balls. Like, I feel like it's just the government's own mini putt or golfing range or something like that, but it's not. This site is said to be the largest electronic monitoring system on the planet. So basically, it's a place where they spy on us, monitoring our every move. The site first opened to spy on the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Since then, we don't know exactly what they're spying on. But it's a vital part of the NSA surveillance network. In 2012, it was believed that the base was involved in a number of drone attacks. However, this has never been confirmed. On top of that, it was revealed that the NSA used the base to, and I quote, aid a significant number of capture-kill operations. That is terrifying, wow. Moving on to number 3, we have Kapustin Yar. Kapustin Yar is basically Russia's version of Area 51. It is a top-secret base created by the USSR. It was used for developing the Soviet space program. But now, rumor has it that it is home to aliens. Apparently, people saw a large red sphere flying in the sky right above this base. Others claim to have seen 3-eyed aliens wearing silver overalls there. I mean, hey, at least he's stylish. In fact, most alien sightings in Russia occur near this top secret base. Coincidence? I think not. It could be that aliens are trying to escape from this base or something like that. There's even rumors of this base being used to conduct alien autopsies. It's pretty creepy. I don't even want to know if I want to find out what goes on in there. In our 2nd spot, we have the secret super command bunker. Apparently, the Pentagon is planning to build a secret command bunker 3,500 feet under Washington, D.C. What's the purpose of this bunker, you ask? Well, just in case of nuclear war, the bunker will keep people safe from the nukes. Apparently, the pandemic shook the US government and now they, and I quote, put plans in place to ensure critical elements of the US government can keep functioning in the midst of an extreme crisis. So they're basically gonna be like, sick, every man for themselves, peace out, and then just disappear into this secret bunker. And in our number 1 spot, we have Porton Down. Close to Stonehenge, there's a place called Porton Down, which is basically a massive experimental testing center. It's known for working on chemical and biological weapons, as well as dealing with dangerous pathogens. The stuff that goes on in there is dark, and I mean dark. Starting in 1945, the government began testing nerve gas on real humans. These testings on humans went until 1989. In the end, more than 3,400 people had nerve gas tested on them. In 1953, a man named Ronald Madison died after being subjected to liquid nerve gas. Not only did they lie and say they were no longer testing the gas on humans, but they denied that the nerve gas was the cause of his death. Recently, however, it was discovered that they are now testing this gas and other dangerous weapons on animals. What else goes on in there is unknown. Like, what if they're still running unethical tests on humans? It's crazy. Starting off this countdown, we have the prisoners. In 1902, American doctors stationed in the Philippines decided to do some experiments on their own. First, they withheld proper nutrition from 29 of their prisoners. They did so in order to induce beriberi, which is a disease caused by lack of vitamin B1. Lack of vitamin B1 can cause difficulty walking, loss of feelings in the hands and feet, and loss of muscle function. It can cause irreversible damage to your nervous system and heart. And they forced these prisoners into this. 4 of the test subjects died as a result. Then later that year, another physician decided to inject 5 prisoners with the bubonic plague. The prisoners had no clue about this, and they became very sick. Then, 4 years later, in 1906, Dr. Richard P. Strong infected more prisoners with cholera. All subjects became sick, and 13 of them sadly died. Most of the tests were done to see what disease they should use in case of biological warfare. In our 9th spot, we had the UK Special Demonstration Squad. This is the name of a group of undercover police officers in the UK. Now, the things that they did are going to shock you. For example, they would steal birth certificates and identities of people that had died at a young age. They'd make sure that they would be around their age and then use their identities. The younger the person died, the better, because that means they didn't already live a life that they would have to cover up. And then they would go around with this new identity. Some cases they actually got into relationships with women, but the whole time they did so just to spy on them. In November of 2015, the Metropolitan Police Force apologized to 7 women tricked into relationships by these officers. Like, imagine that, dating someone you're madly in love with, sometimes even having a kid with them, only for them to be like, oh, sorry, gotta go, was only dating you to get intel on you and your friend circle. It's disgusting, and it's actually happened to multiple women. In our 8th spot, we have the radioactive waste. Apparently, there's a huge radioactive dumping zone located in Tonawanda, New York. In fact, they dumped more than 37 million gallons of radioactive waste from their World War II atomic bomb tests. This area has a high rate of cancer and thyroid conditions, and this is the reason why, and no one's talking about it. In our 7th spot, we have the hepatitis tests. In 1956, the US government began running tests on young individuals living at the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island. This was a state-supported institution for children with intellectual disabilities. And what they did to these students was give them hepatitis in order to track the development of the viral infection. Of course, they were being experimented on without knowledge or consent. To make matters worse, the study lasted 14 years. They also injected them with a number of drugs to see what they would do to their body and the hepatitis. Imagine intentionally making a group of people sick for an experiment. The grossest part is that when the government was exposed for this project, they tried to justify their actions by saying that these people were probably gonna wind up contracting it anyways. In our 6th spot today, we have Operation Popeye. This is another very wild one. Operation Popeye was a highly classified weather modification program during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972. You heard me correctly. The government learned how to control the weather. Basically, they wanted to increase rainfall in certain areas to prevent enemies and military supply trucks from being able to travel. In fact, they caused a number of landslides and flooding in that area. Weather manipulation has since been banned from use for military gain. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with HIV. In the 1980s, the HIV epidemic broke out. No one knew how it spread, they just knew that it should be feared, and tons of LGBTQ+ community members were sadly contracting the virus. Well, rumor has it that HIV was a government experiment that was meant to wipe out the undesirables. Of course, the US government has denied this claim, and it's just a conspiracy, we don't know for sure. But based on the other experiments done on minority groups, it's hard to know what to believe. In our 4th spot today, we have Project 112 and Project SHAD, or SHAD. Project 112 and Project SHAD took place from 1962 to 1973 and involved a number of veterans or military personnel. Basically, both tests involved exposing these people to substances they might want to use in warfare. Nearly 6,000 people were exposed to Coxiella burnetii, which is Q fever, Staphylococcus enterotoxin B, which causes food poisoning, and sarin and soman gas. Sarin is a very, very dangerous nerve gas, and soman can cause death in minutes. Both can be fatal if only the tiniest amount gets on the skin. These men had no clue that they were being exposed to this. Moving on to number 3, we have Project Sunshine. This is another very messed up government project. During the 1950s, the US government was using stillborns to conduct radiation tests on. They wanted to determine the effects that radiation would have on humans and how much we could withstand in case of a nuclear fallout. They called this Project Sunshine, and it was anything but rainbows and sunshine. What's sad is that the government was stealing body parts and tissues from morgues without families' consent. It's said that more than 1,500 samples were gathered worldwide. This is incredibly sad and sick. Coming in at number 2, we have the syphilis experiments. In 1932, the US Public Health Service created an experiment to see the health effects of untreated syphilis. But the test subjects were told that they were receiving free treatment to cure their syphilis. And that was a lie. Instead of giving the men the recommended penicillin treatment, they gave them placebos, like aspirin. Sadly, 28 men died of syphilis because of these experiments, 100 more passed away from syphilis-related complications, and 40 spouses contracted this disease. And 19 women who gave birth passed on syphilis to their newborn children. In 1997, Bill Clinton apologized to the survivors and their families on behalf of the government. And he admitted that the tests were, and I quote, profoundly and morally wrong. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the radiation tests. In 1953, a number of tests were done on pregnant women to see the effects that radioactive iodine would have on them and their newborns. These studies were terrible. In one study, researchers gave these women doses of iodine 131. Sadly, they all miscarried. When they did, they continued to study the women's aborted embryos. Another study took place after World War II. 829 pregnant mothers in Tennessee were given vitamin drinks. They were informed that these drinks would improve their health and their babies. But it actually contained radioactive iron, and the researchers wanted to see how fast the radioisotopes crossed into the placenta. Several of the young passed away from these experiments. 4 died from cancers as a result of the experiments, and the women experienced rashes, bruises, anemia, hair and tooth loss, and cancer as well. Meanwhile, they just wanted the best for their babies and thought that this drink was going to help them, not kill them. Starting off this countdown, we have the spies. Tons of people are afraid that the government is spying on them. It's thought that they can tap into our phones and watch us and listen to our calls, even though I don't know why they would want to. Like, what are they gonna see me scrolling through like Instagram all day? It's not a pretty sight. Now, we can't really prove that they do, but recently a post on Reddit revealed that they are tracking us. So I don't know if this is a thing outside of Canada, but it is in Canada. So Apple and Android phones now have a COVID-19 sensor on them. Basically, this allows the government to track your every move. A couple of weeks ago, a lot of cell phone users were having phone disruptions, and that's apparently when the tracker was put on the phones. In secret. But it's not on all phones. Once you update your phone, then it's automatically turned on. Don't believe me? Well, the post says that for iPhone users, go to Settings, Privacy, Health, and then you'll see it, but it's not yet functional. For Android users, go to Settings, then Google Settings, and it should be there. This is said to be able to notify you if you've been near someone that has the virus. But it's also a way for the government to track your every move. Seriously, why would they have this feature and then just like not tell us about it? Why is everything done in secrecy? They're up to something. In our 9th spot, we have Operation Big Itch. Operation Big Itch was the name given to a number of tests conducted at Dugway Proving Grounds in 1954. The experiments involved testing biological warfare on unexpected fleas. At least this time they used fleas and not real people. So the fleas were loaded into 2 types of munitions and then dropped from the air. After a bunch of trial and error, the operation was a success. Not only could the fleas survive the drop, but they also could still attach themselves onto the hosts, which were guinea pigs. These tests were done to see if it was possible to use infected fleas and drop them into an area to make people sick. That's not all though. In a project known as Operation Big Buzz, they decided to use mosquitoes. In May of 1955, over 300,000 uninfected mosquitoes were dropped over parts of the US state of Georgia. If it worked, they were going to infect these mosquitoes with yellow fever. These two are just some of the entomological warfare tests done in history. In our 8th spot, we have the Edgewood Arsenal drug experiments. Beginning in the 1950s, the Army decided to run some tests on psychoactive drugs and other chemical agents on soldiers. About 7,000 soldiers took place in these experiments, and they were exposed to 250 different chemicals. Some of the chemicals that were tested on them were sarin gas, LSD, PCP, cannabinoids, irritants, and riot control agents. The effects these chemicals and drugs had on the soldiers were studied and noted. In 1975, the tests were canceled after being deemed controversial. In the end, most of the test subjects suffered from psychological trauma and serious health problems. In our 7th spot, we have the plutonium experiments. Over the years, the US government has participated in a number of plutonium experiments. One of them involved a man named Albert Stevens. This man was misdiagnosed with stomach cancer and then was told he was going to receive treatment for this cancer. Meanwhile, he was just a test subject. He was injected with plutonium without even knowing. And then they said he was cured. He was led to believe that the treatment had cured him. In fact, he received the highest known accumulated radiation dose ever recorded. It should have been lethal. In the end, the plutonium remained present in his body for the remainder of his life, slowly decaying over the years. He ended up dying 20 years later from heart disease. And his ashes were actually stolen so that they could continue analyzing the radioactivity of this man. But they did this without the consent of his relatives. In our 6th spot, we have the burn victims. In the 1950s, researchers at the Medical College of Virginia performed a number of unethical experiments on burn victims. In particular, they targeted poor black victims. These victims did not give their consent for these tests. They were then subjected to additional burning, experimental antibiotics, and injections of radioactive isotopes. Over a 10-year period, more than 770 patients were experimented on. 460 of them were African American. A number of people developed fluid loss and anemia from the severe burns that they were subjected to. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the chemicals. From 1950 to 1953, the US Army conducted a number of experiments over 6 cities in the US and Canada. The tests were to see the dispersal patterns of chemical weapons. So they sprayed chemicals all over these cities. Some of the chemicals being zinc cadmium sulfide, which was thought to not be harmful. One place affected by these sprays was Winnipeg, Manitoba in Canada. They were informed that they were testing a chemical fog to protect Winnipeg in the event of a Russian attack. So they said that this fog was going to be a defense study, which was a lie. Although it was said to be a small dose that they were exposed to, in some urban environments, people were exposed to higher levels. And because of how small the size of the particles were, it made it more dangerous according to a scientist, due to the fact that they could get lodged deeper into people's respiratory systems. Thankfully, no one died from the tests, but it's so sketchy how they lied about it all. Like, yeah, we're doing these tests to protect you. Just kidding! In our 4th spot, we have the HOLMESBURG program. From 1951 to 1974, a number of dermatological experiments took place in Holmesburg Prison in Pennsylvania. The studies were performed by Dr. Albert M. Kligman on behalf of the US Army, Dow Chemical Company, and Johnson & Johnson. The test started with looking at health effects of dioxin and other herbicides on the human body. So they exposed some patients to these chemicals, and years later, a number of them developed a variety of health problems like lupus. So they actually sued the professor, but that didn't stop him from continuing on with these experiments. In fact, he increased the amount of dioxin that the people were exposed to. He applied 7,500 milligrams of dioxin. That's 468 times the dosage of the first test, which still made people ill. The prisoners developed a number of terrible inflammatory pustules and papules. That's not all though. In 1967, the US Army paid Kligman to apply skin blistering chemicals to the faces and backs of inmates so they could learn how the skin protects itself from toxic chemicals in case of attack. One creepy report from Kligman said, and I quote, All I saw before me were acres of skin. It was like a farmer seeing a fertile field for the first time. That's disgusting. In our third spot, we had the FP-45 Liberator, which was anything but liberating. This was a failed weapon that was going to be used by the US military during World War I. Since it was small, it could be made cheaper and more of them could be produced. The plan was to have these weapons airdropped to the soldiers. They then were going to use these weapons to kill enemy troops before stealing their weapons. Plus, they thought that enemies would be intimidated when they see all these weapons being airdropped to them. They wanted to strike fear into them. The US produced 1 million of these weapons, but it was all for nothing. The whole thing was found impractical and ineffective, and a waste of time and money. In our second spot, we have the Dorset experiments. Between 1953 to 1975, a series of experiments were done to see how far one ship or aircraft could spread a biological warfare agent over the UK. These experiments were referred to as the Dorset Biological Warfare Experiments. Between 1961 to 1968, more than 1 million people along the south coast of England were exposed to E. coli and Bacillus globigi. It was spread by a military ship anchored off of the Dorset coast, spraying the organisms towards them. That was just one experiment out of many. Another one included releasing a bacteria in the London Underground at lunchtime to see how far it would spread. In fact, people close to where the trials took place became very sick. Women miscarried, other kids were born with cerebral palsy or had birth defects. They blame these experiments. And in our number one spot today, we have the irradiation experiments. Between 1960 to 1971, the Department of Defense funded a number of radiation experiments. These experiments, again, were conducted without the person's consent and was mainly performed on poor and black patients with cancer. The patients were told that they were receiving a treatment that might cure their cancer, which was a lie. Instead, researchers were seeing the effects that high levels of radiation would have on the human body. Imagine thinking that these doctors were here to help you, but in the end, you were just one big test subject for them. And they weren't helping you. In the end, it made patients worse.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have interception. To start off this list today, let's talk about one of the very first electronic interceptions because, to be honest, this was happening sooner than I would have thought, but in a very different way than what we're used to now. Let's set the stage and take it back to the beginning of the 1900s, the first year of the new century. We were in the midst of the Boer War, which lasted from 1899 until 1902. Prior to this war, the British Royal Navy had installed wireless sets that had been produced by Marconi onto their ships. This allowed the British Army to be able to use some limited wireless signaling and communication. During the war, however, nearing the end, things took a bit of a turn. While the British had captured and were holding cities and towns, there were still many dispersed Boer commandos who were out there and were taking to different tactics. They began a guerrilla war, and part of that was by intercepting telegraph messages. Not only did they intercept important messages, but they were even able to capture some of the sets to be able to use them themselves.
Moving on at number 9, we have NIXONS Health. Now, this isn't really classified information, but I thought it was quite interesting, and it was brought to my attention by Kelly, Roy on Reddit. So, the files of Richard Nixon's longtime physician, Dr. Walter Tkach, probably said that last name wrong, are on lockdown. The doctor's son has the files and is planning to eventually release them to the Nixon library, but when he does, they will not be open for 75 years. Not only that, but taped conversations between Nixon and his doctor are also on lockdown, and they will not be released. Now, why is this significant? Well, some people believe that Nixon was incapacitated towards the end of his presidency. If so, then under the 25th Amendment, he should have had his authority suspended. So there's a reason why the government has been keeping these files classified. It's going to apparently expose a lot. In our 8th spot, we have the trade documents. Back in 2019, the Reddit account OsterMaxNN leaked a bunch of UK government trade documents. The documents discussed future trade deals between the US and the UK. They also revealed plans by the Conservative Party to privatize National Health Service. After investigation, it turns out that the Reddit user that leaked the documents was part of a larger coordinated effort from Russia. Reddit said, and I quote, "We investigated this account and the accounts connected to it. And today we believe this was part of a campaign that has been reported as originating from Russia." In our 7th spot, we have Area 51. Everyone wants to know what really goes on in Area 51. Is it really where they're keeping aliens? I need to know. But sadly, we don't truly know. But we do have some insider information on what it's like in Area 51. Yeah, you heard me. 8 years ago, a Reddit user by the name of Kiver16 revealed that his mother's boyfriend is Steven Gorvan, aka one of the people who was at Area 51 testing the Mars rover. He uploaded a picture of Steven holding a sign saying, "Hi Reddit, ask me anything," as proof that it actually was him and he wasn't just gonna make it up. So people quickly jumped to it, asking him tons of questions on the mysterious base. During one part of the Q&A, Steven revealed that when he first arrived at the base, he saw a strange aircraft flying low across the desert floor. He believed that it was a test flight for a secret aircraft. He said it moved at subsonic speed and didn't make a lot of noise. He also revealed that Area 51 is much bigger than it looks, with tons of different sectors and buildings. Now sadly, he didn't see any aliens. But he did reveal that it seemed like we are close to hoverboard technology, like the ones you see in Back to the Future. So that's pretty cool. Moving on to number 6, we have D.B. Cooper. One of the most famous and mysterious cases of all times. And I might have found out what happened to him. But first, let me give a rundown on this dude for the people who have no clue what I'm talking about. Dan Cooper, or D.B. Cooper, is a man who was responsible for a plane hijacking in 1971. No one knows who he is or where he is now. So in 1971, Cooper boarded the plane, and once in the air, he handed the flight attendant a note saying that he had a bomb in his suitcase. He demanded $200,000 and a parachute, but he didn't want any hostages. So they landed in Seattle, he got his request, and then he told the pilot to fly to Mexico City. However, along the way, he took the money and his parachute and jumped out of the plane. The police looked for Cooper until 2016, and this case is known as one of the longest active searches in history. Now, 2 years ago, a former FBI special agent joined Reddit and did a AMA, Ask Me Anything. To prove it was really him, he held a piece of paper like the other dude, saying his name and his Reddit, blah blah blah. The man is Mark Ruskin, who worked 20 years in undercover operations. One of the questions that someone asked him was about D.B. Cooper, and what the FBI thought happened to him and what he thought happened to him. Ready for this? Both the FBI and Mark believe that D.B. Cooper did not survive the parachute down. I know, so anticlimactic, but apparently they have evidence to suggest he didn't make it. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cat bomb. So this secret isn't really a secret anymore. I guess most of these aren't secrets anymore, but I didn't know this was a thing until I read about it on Reddit, meaning that I bet some of you haven't heard about it either. So during World War II, the government thought it would be a good idea to strap a cat to a bomb. They thought that by doing so, it would assure the bombs would reach their target. Cats hate water, so they thought if you drop a cat strapped to a bomb over water, the cat would avoid the water and then would just land on the battleship's deck. But obviously, for many reasons, that did not work out. Cats would end up passing out midair before sinking without a trace. They also tried something similar with bats, which again, didn't really work. Moving on to number 4, we have the bomb shelter. This is going to come to a shock to anyone who lives outside of the US. Posted on Reddit by the user Deadpool8988, they said that at one point, the US government was telling people to build a bomb shelter in their backyards. They instructed people to dig a big enough hole in their backyard and then cover it with a door. They were told to hide out there in case of a nuclear attack. But turns out that the real reason why they were telling families to do this was so that if there was a nuclear attack, the government wouldn't have to bury as many bodies. So families were literally digging their own graves. That is extremely disturbing. In our third spot, we have the blood supply. Okay, this one is going to be pretty crazy. So back in 1984, the Red Cross Society in Canada was importing blood products from the US. This was at the time of the AIDS crisis, and America was hit much harder with it. There was fear that the disease was going to be transmitted through this blood. But the Red Cross ignored it, and according to this Reddit user who was a lab worker for the American Red Cross, apparently they were aware of this and so was the US government. But they didn't warn Canadians. Instead, they told them they had nothing to worry about and that they tested the blood before sending it. The guy was forced to keep his mouth shut and lie. As a result, tons of hemophiliacs who had blood transfusions later died of AIDS. What's freaky is that the Reddit user that shared this information later deleted his account. I just hope that he's safe and that the government didn't come for him for exposing them. In our second spot, we have the leaked emails. In March 2016, the personal Gmail account of John Podesta, a former White House chief of staff and chair of Hillary Clinton's 2016 US presidential campaign, was hacked, and his emails revealed some very disturbing things. So the emails were posted to Reddit along with other websites, and then users started to decipher them. They believe that Hillary and other people of power are part of a human and a sex ring. In the emails, they use code words like pizza, cheese pizza, and hot dogs. Kinda weird. And it would say things like, and I quote, "I'm dreaming about your hot dog stand in Hawaii." Clearly, there's a hidden message to that. I can't dive into too much detail about it for obvious reasons, but you should do some research of your own. It's crazy. What makes this more suspicious is that the government removed all posts about this from Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media sites. Any posts about the emails and the theories will be removed. And in our number one spot, we have the blue van. Okay, this one thoroughly creeps me out. Like, it just proves that the government is up to no good. So this story was posted on Reddit by a former homicide detective. One time he was called to a scene where the victim had called 911 saying that someone was trying to kill him. He told police that he was hiding in his panic room. When they arrived at his house, there were no signs of forced entry, and all the doors remained locked from the inside. Inside the house, there was no damage, it was just super clean, no signs of violence or anything. Due to this, the detective believed that the attacker was someone that the man knew and invited inside. When they eventually got to the panic room, they found the man sitting on the floor. His face had a terrified expression plastered on it. Both of his arms were missing, not cut off. They looked as if they had been ripped off. His missing limbs were never found. Now, here's where it gets spooky. As soon as they reported their findings, the police captain told the team to give all of the evidence, along with the victim's body, to the individuals in a blue van that had arrived on the scene. The blue van belonged to the government. After they did this, the case was buried. They never heard any more information on it. Like, what? Seems like some government creature got released and killed this guy or something like that, and then they're trying to cover it up.
Coming in number 10, we have the Empire State Building 103rd floor viewing room. I mean, if you want to see the whole New York skyline and you don't want to break the bank on your trip to the top of the Empire State Building, and you want to grab a drink, you better believe that there's a hotel called The Standard that has all of those things. But for those of you who really want to head to the top of New York and can't do it without popping into the iconic Empire State Building, then I'll have you know that you're not even getting the best view. You spent all that money to go to the top of the Empire State Building only to find out that there is a secret room that you are not qualified to check out. There happens to be a 103rd floor that you can't get to. This helps the rich and famous see the whole city without tourist crowds. Now, I'm sorry, but just going to the front desk and asking if you can get there isn't enough. You actually have to be someone of status. Unless you're very rich, very famous, or a government official, you are not going anywhere near the 103rd floor. I'm sorry, but you're just not important enough. The government and the people who run the building don't want you going up to that floor because it's going to lose its attraction. I'm sorry, but you're going to be stuck on the 102nd floor, looking up, wondering which important people are hovering above you.
In our number 9 spot today, we have mobilization. The Russo-Japanese War is one that lasted for a little over a year, spanning from 1904 to 1905. While the war was mainly between Russia and Japan, the signal interception I want to talk about today came from a British British ship. As the Russian fleet was preparing for conflict with Japan in 1904, a British ship called the HMS Diana was stationed in the Suez Canal. This canal is located in Egypt and it connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. While stationed here, the HMS Diana ended up intercepting Russian naval wireless signals that were being sent out. These signals were apparently intended to signal for the mobilization of the fleet. In our number 8 spot today we have the BBC. So for this one we have to be on the same page for what a numbers station is. Basically they're shortwave radio stations and the transmissions or broadcasts are usually certain numbers or other repetitive things which are believed to be aimed to address intelligence officers who are operating in foreign countries. So for this one we are taking it back to 1983 when the BBC, yes the British Broadcasting Corporation, received a letter from a listener they had in Andorra. This listener had written into the World Service Waveguide program to complain that during her attempt at listening, she was interrupted by a female voice that was reading out numbers in English, and she wanted to know what this interference was. While the corporation gave a regular, non-sinister answer to the confused woman, after more research was done into the case, people aren't quite convinced. Many people who know much more about these things and recognize the patterns seen in number stations are fairly certain that this interruption was a numbers station that was being broadcast on a random frequency that just happened to intercept with this woman's BBC program. In our number 7 spot today we have the Duga radar. So for this one we are talking about a huge missile defense radio structure called Duga 3. This structure is suspected of having been wildly over budget and it was the source of many complaints after it was built. The systems were extremely powerful and broadcast in short-wave radio bands. They would appear without warning and sounded like a sharp, repetitive tapping noise, and they would disrupt things like legitimate broadcasts, amateur radio, commercial aviation communications, and utility transmissions, which all led to there being international complaints, and at the time, people didn't know what it was. This led people to think that this signal was actually being used for things such as Soviet mind control or weather control experiments. In our number 6 spot today we have World War I. For this one we are taking it back to the First World War and discussing something that really changed the way we use wireless communications. Basically, during the First World War, British forces were able to intercept German radio communications. With this newfound ability, they were able to learn about the plans that German forces had and used this to their advantage. Of course, later when this was found out, no one wanted a similar thing to happen to them, but the technology was so valuable they couldn't just give up on it. This is said to be what led to the use of cryptography, which was intended to conceal the messages being sent out, and thus cryptoanalysis, which originated to get around this new extra layer of protection, was born. In our number 5 spot today we have Cobra Mist. This is the code name that was used to describe the experimental over-the-horizon radar that ended up being stationed at Orford Ness, England. It was originally supposed to be stationed in Turkey, where it could cover most of the European Soviet airspace, but Turkey had some objections and weren't all that pleased with the idea. This led to the site being moved to the UK, where it offers a view of most of Eastern Europe. The system was built through the 1960s and into the 1970s, so you think it would have been this amazing success, but things went more than a little awry when it was first turned on. When switched on, it began having these noise problems, and despite best efforts, no one could figure out where these problems were coming from, which led to the project being shut down in 1973. In our number 4 spot today we have UVB-76. This sound apparently began to happen in the 1980s when a radio tower just north of Moscow began transmitting a random and seemingly bizarre assortment of beeps, but in 1992 the sound began to change. In that year it suddenly switched to a buzzing sort of sound that would last about a second, and this sound would occur somewhere between 21 to 34 times every minute. This strange routine would be interrupted once every few weeks by a male voice, which would then be reciting a string of numbers and words, mostly Russian sounding names like Anna and Nikolai. The buzzing wasn't necessarily always exactly the same, as the tone would switch and there would be different intervals between the buzzes, but one thing that was always consistent is that every hour on the hour, the station would have 2 quick consecutive buzzes. To make things stranger, in June of 2010 and also in August of that year, the station briefly stopped sending out signals, despite it having been constantly for years and years. At the end of August in 2010, the station again changed and there began to be different shuffling sounds and thuds that could be heard in the background, and often little snippets of the Dance of the Little Swans from Swan Lake would also interrupt the broadcast. While we obviously know that these sounds are coming from a radio broadcast and we can make out what some of the sounds we're hearing are, we have absolutely no idea what purpose they serve, where they are coming from, or what they might mean. Right now, the best guess is that these are secret messages that are being transmitted to secret agents. If that is the case, it's likely we might never know exactly what is being discussed in these broadcasts. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lincolnshire Poacher. The Lincolnshire Poacher, which is a British numbers station, was being transmitted from Cyprus. It began transmitting in the middle of the 1960s and was in operation until quite recently in 2008. The station is believed to have been operated by the British Secret Intelligence Service, and the reason behind its name is because it is said that the station commonly used bars from the English folk song of the same name. There would often be a female voice heard reciting a group of 5 numbers, with the final number in the group being read in a higher pitched voice. It is believed that the station was meant to be communicating with undercover agents operating in the Middle East. Back in 2006, however, this broadcasting was interrupted by the North Korean Foreign Language Service, Voice of Korea. This language service began to broadcast on the same frequency as the Lincolnshire Poacher, which some believe may have been intentional. In our number 2 spot today, we have Ana Montez. For this one, we're taking a bit of a turn and talking about someone who used secret signals and transmissions in order to spy on the US for Cuba. Ana Montez is a former American senior analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and for 17 years she used encrypted messages to receive information and communicate with the Cuban government in order to spy on the United States. In the charging documents, American federal prosecutors said, quote, "Montez communicated with the Cuban intelligence service through encrypted messages and received her instructions through shortwave encrypted transmissions from Cuba. In addition, Montez communicated by coded numeric pager messages with the Cuban intelligence service by public telephones located in the District of Columbia and Maryland. The codes included 'I received message' or 'danger'." Anna was arrested by the FBI at her office on September 21st, 2001, and part of the reason why is because she apparently had classified information on the US military's pending invasion of Afghanistan, and people were worried that she might go on to further reveal this information. While Anna pleaded guilty to her crimes, which could have carried a death sentence, she received 25 years and her tentative release date is January 8th, 2023. In our number 1 spot today, we have Attention. This is a number station that ended up being the first to be officially and publicly accused of transmitting messages to spies. This station was the center of an espionage trial, and US prosecutors claimed that the station was sending numbered codes for the accused to write down using Sony handheld shortwave receivers and then decode using a computer program. This gave them their next instructions that were to be followed in their spying plans. During this trial, the FBI testified that they had entered one of the spies' apartments and copied the decryption code that was used for the messages sent from the station. Using this code, they were able to unveil the secret messages being sent out, which they read in court.